Good morning. I was very pleased to discover that this was the topic that I was given for this Sunday, because it mentions the saints as who we should look toward in understanding what's being said here. And I have a great love for the saints, and we've all studied many of them together. So I want to start off with a story that comes from the life of Trace Newman. Now, Trace Newman was one of the chapters in the autobiography of a yogi, and Master had a chance to visit her. And she was a stigmatist in Bavaria during the war, World War II, and many people came and were blessed by her in that way. She had a great sense of humor. And so here's a story of a visit made by a professor who was going to psych her out and figure out what was really going on. A well-known professor in a university who had examined Therese went into an unusual explanation for Therese's enlightenment. First of all, he said, the Friday bleedings are caused by autosuggestion. She did not know what the word meant, so he explained it as follows. Year in and year out, you imagine that you have the wound marks of Christ on your body and that the wounds bleed. Thereupon, the wounds do actually appear and bleed. Therese listened all very attentively without saying a word. After the professor had finished, what he evidently regarded as a profound analysis, he settled back to await Therese's reaction. It was as follows. You must be a brilliant man, otherwise you would not be a university professor. Now, I will ask you to begin to imagine, day in and day out, that you are an ox. That you also imagine you have received horns. All of a sudden, you find to your amazement that that is actually what you are. The professor departed without saying a word. There she was, just right there in the moment. We don't necessarily understand stigmatists, but she was asked why she thought this happened to her, and she said to give testimony to the fact that Christ was real. This is very interesting that this topic comes right after Raymond's wonderful talk last week on how little historical facts we have to say Christ really was real and really had these experiences. I personally never thought to question it, but many people do, of course. So this is lovely. Now, the fact that in this reading we're pointing to the saints when we're trying to understand the I of that I am the vine, which has been taken by the Catholic Church to be a statement of their exclusive relationship with Christ. And yet that's a misinterpretation of the scripture. The interpretation is that we are all being asked to raise our consciousness, to raise our understanding, to lift ourselves up into the reality of which we know very little at first, but gain great understanding through our inner practices. Let's see where I am. I had an interesting experience about 2 weeks ago. It was very brief and very odd as far as I was concerned. I had a moment, just in the ordinary daily routines, of suddenly experiencing not knowing that the world was anything but what I could see and hear and touch and feel. You know what I mean? I mean, it was like I live in a world, I have lived in a world this lifetime for many, many years in the understanding that there is much more to my being, to my life, to my experience than just the physical presence, than just nature and the joys of this world, that there is a whole other reality of which I am a part. That's what we're talking about here. But those few moments in that day a couple of weeks ago, I woke up and I was given this experience of not knowing that, of just having this as the reality. It was very interesting for me. I found it odd. I found it very instructive. And it informed my prayer life for the whole world, that we all get to, that we all achieve this understanding, that this is just one small part of the experience that we're here to have, and that there's much about it that is unseen when we can raise our consciousness through prayer, through meditation, through serving others, through loving others. We can raise our consciousness and become aware of that aspect of ourselves and integrate that into our lives. Isn't that what the spiritual path is all about? The saints, why the saints are so fun to interact with is because what I understand through this passage is that they, as individuals in a particular lifetime, have made God contact. They know God. God is a deep part of their being. But they have a lot of karma to work out, and so they come back. And as we all know, a lot of the saints get into lots of trouble in their lives and think they're going in one direction, and then suddenly it all comes back, and they realize, oh yes, St. Francis's life, which we know well, is all about that. He thought he was going to be a great warrior. He wasn't a great warrior. He was thrown into prison by the opposite side. But then he realized he was a warrior for God. And that came quickly because in his path toward ascension, he had already made that commitment to God. Anandamoy Ma, who is very dear to Ananda, Swamiji had a lot of contact with Anandamoy Ma. She was a saint in India who attracted a great following. She was full of love and wisdom, and she traveled from place to place just to serve her devotees. And so she had a very loyal following of Orthodox Hindus, is the way she put it. And then she gained an international reputation and drew people from all over the world. And her advice was often very striking and very unexpected. So there's this interesting story about her counseling an American devotee. And she was being badly treated by the Orthodox Hindus in the ashram. And so she went to Anandamoy Ma to get something to happen to help her out. And Anandamoy Ma's response was, "You can take it." Just like that. "You can take it. They can't." So, wow. And then she goes, "You can cry and shout and get some satisfaction that way, but you should listen to me and just take it." See, they know, they understand. They're not, Anandamoy Ma's way was not to coddle people and not to, necessarily comfort them out of a situation. She had such a piercing understanding of how we grow spiritually, and she just socked it to them. So I love that story of her. And as Swami has said, the saints are unabashedly, gloriously eccentric. So we can relate to that, right? Because many of us are eccentric. We understand that. So they are God living within our humanity, and we can have access to them. We can talk about this because we've had experience, we've had some inner awareness, we've had some inner awakening. Padre Pio is another lovely saint that was very contemporary. He died in 1968. Again, for the church, for the Catholic Church, the saints when they were alive were terrible trouble. They made things difficult because they attracted. Their power of God love was so strong that parishes emptied out and everyone came to where Padre Pio was. This is the deal. And so this upsets the church. They think things should stay orderly and people should stay within their parish and appreciate their priest. But when there is a being who really recognizes the God within, which is where we're going, then people are drawn to that if they have any sense of it. They want to be in that presence. We want to be in that presence. We want to feel what that feels like. And so Padre Pio was put in a monastery way, way far away. It didn't help. People came by the thousands. But he was also very much persecuted by the church. This is another thing with saints. They cause trouble. They make people behave badly because they're so afraid of them. But they're just way showers. They're loving way showers. And finally, Padre Pio took the punishment being questioning his experiences, putting him in solitary for a while, not allowing him to do confession, which was really heartbreaking for him. He so much wanted to serve people. But then in the end, he said, "If you didn't persecute me, I would never have been saved." And of course, that word means I would never have been able to ascend. And again, we've heard this from other saints. It's kind of their story, century by century. Women and men, as saints, are persecuted out of fear, and they just persevere. They just are who they are. I found a list that Swami suggested. Let's see if I can find it in my notes. Yeah, the qualities of a saint. First thing, boundless energy, constant conversation with God, flawless discrimination. I think that's what Anandamoy Ma was demonstrating when she said to that lady, "You can take it. They can't. They'd fall apart, but you can take it. You can take all of that stuff. Just be strong in yourself." A love and power balance. That's the saints. A love and power balanced. They're not sweet and meek and mild. That's not what they are. They're not angels. Angels are something altogether different. The saints are here to get the story across and inspire us. They're sincere, they're attuned, and theirs is a perfection of humanity, not a rejection. In other words, they show us how to live in this world and engage. So those are the qualities that we love and we respond to again and again. I did this funny thing yesterday, and I will never do it again. I put notes on both sides of the paper. That's not a good idea. There is a little book that is written by Devi Mukherjee, a fellow, and he was a friend of Swamiji's. He was in India. He traveled a great deal, and he wrote a little book called Shaped by the Saints. It was interesting how that book came to be, and we do have it in the boutique. If you want to be introduced to some new and interesting beings. He wasn't a writer exactly, so our friend Durga Smolin, she did some of the writing for him, and then it was worked out by Swamiji, and he says in the book, this is very worthwhile to read. But there was a saint that he visited called Nayaswami. And this saint, every saint has a particular mission, a particular way of waking us up, a particular way of playing out the story that says, I am human and divine. So for this Swami saint, it was spending time with tigers. So Devi Mukherjee was very interested in this. He really wanted to see this Tiger Swami. He wasn't the same Tiger Swami as the autobiography. So he went and found him, and he stayed in a tent, and Narayan Swami said, don't you dare come out. You'll be in great danger, but there is a little window in the tent, and you can look out and see. And he looked out, and Debbie had a particular interest in tigers. He felt he loved them. So he looked out and he saw Narayan Swami petting the tigers, petting them. And they were rolling over. They're just like pussycats. And Devi Mukherjee just could barely go to sleep that night. He was so excited, and he really wanted to take part in that. But Narayan said to him, yes, you have, he said, you've got to love. You've got to have love for them. And he goes, well, I love my cats. I have love for my pets, and I love these cats too. He goes, yes, you have love, but only 60%. You must increase your love another 40%. Then you can pet the tigers. That's interesting. It's interesting to think about. Devi said, why, I can't do them. Why, I can't do that. But I'll take your advice. And as you look at each saint, as we go along, and I will teach about saints in the summer. Usually I'll have a class outside in the community. Dinner and a Saint is what I've been calling it lately. And if you have ideas of what saints you'd like to study with me, just give me a suggestion. Because as you look at each saint, you see that they are, in fact, in the company of God. And that's where we want to be, first of all, in our journey, in our divine ascension. We want to be in the company of God. That's our goal. Think of Jesus and his disciples. Think of really how curiously, readily they came to him. That wasn't without preamble. They were not just ordinary fishermen. They had a spiritual life, and now the spark was Jesus in the flesh, coming and calling those whom he knew would respond. And now that question was asked of them, could they in fact make that leap? So the saints also grow. The saints, so that's why also they are the ones to look at, because really they are us. And Swami urged us to think of ourselves as saints in the making. And I've said this before, but I love this, what happened at Ananda Village when early years, there was a monastery, and the monks decided they would call themselves future saints of America. I just thought that was wonderful. It's a wonderful way of thinking about it. What was the realization that Christ was asking his disciples? It was a big leap for them. He was asking them if they could perceive that he was the avatar, that he was Christ, he was the Christ, and he was God in the flesh. This is who our masters are. They also had lives, many, many lives, of learning the way of the life of joy, the life of ascension. And they bless our lives because they have compassion for us. They see us and they see the ways in which we're making mistakes. Okay, big deal. Why not? I mean, it's a big journey. It's a big learning curve. It's a big learning curve to live life. And he's wanting them to understand that love is the magnet. Love is the magnet in every case. Love is what his mission was about. Love and joy and wisdom is what Master's vision was about. And so he asked that that love be given to all. Thank you.